Hello. Thanks to everyone for coming out here today. And thank you to the Cook Leadership Academy for having me, and the Hauenstein Center as well. So like Jen said, I am the founder of Uptown Kitchen, a launchpad for culinary entrepreneurship. We exist to foster and grow the food culture in Grand Rapids by providing affordable commercial kitchen space, assistance and access to market opportunities for startup food businesses. So before I begin talking about leadership, I'd like to give a little additional background on how I got to where I am today. Like Jen said, I'm a Calvin graduate in 2011. I was a business major there, so I graduated with a business and marketing degree with a minor in Spanish. I started my first big girl job at Steelcase just shortly before graduating from Calvin. But the fall before that, as an honors student, I needed to complete a final project to graduate with honors. I met with my advisor for the project, and we thought it'd be a really good idea for you to write a business plan. You're interested in small business, you haven't taken any small business classes at Calvin, this might be a good opportunity for you. So I spent the first few weeks of the project interviewing business owners around the Grand Rapids area, trying to learn from their experiences, understand what it was like to be an entrepreneur, specifically in Grand Rapids. Did I just lose my... Am I good? Okay. It sounds a little different up here. And towards the end of the interviews, I was talking to Amy out at the table, and she mentioned how people were coming into her store every so often with these amazing food products that they were preparing at home. And legally, you can't sell those products in-store or online. They have to be produced in a commercial kitchen. So I didn't think too much of it at the time, but was out on a run a couple days later, and I thought, you know, why isn't someone renting them commercial kitchen space so that they can sell their food products in the area? I had over the past few years, as I moved out of the dorms, started cooking for myself, thinking about where am I buying my food and where is that coming from and how is this affecting my health? I had the opportunity at Calvin to write a variety of papers on college or topics that I chose. So I was writing my Spanish papers on organic food during the boom of the industry in 2008 and 2009, and completed my economics projects on how farmers markets affect local food economies. So I was reading books on my own and learning about how our local economy is so dependent on the strength of our food economy. And this thinking started to spin into this idea of the Kitchen Incubator. I started doing some research and realized that these kitchens were actually all over the country. I just hadn't heard of it because there wasn't one in Grand Rapids at the time that I was doing this project. So I spent the whole semester writing the business plan for Uptown Kitchen. I presented it to my professors, got my A, called it good, and left for Chicago for this semester to finish my school at Calvin. So I spent the semester interning and living in the city. Up until this point, and maybe even since high school when I wanted to go into business, I had the idea that I'd go work in a high-rise in a big city and work for a firm and have this really great career. But I actually spent the semester in Chicago interning for Rogers Business Park Alliance. So I was working with local neighborhood businesses in one of the most diverse neighborhoods in Chicago and riding the Red Line up from Grant Park every morning and back, so I had about 45 minutes each way every day to read and learn. I was putting on events for business retention and business attraction, and really starting to shift my focus and what I wanted to do in my career. In the meantime, I got an email from a professor at Calvin about a business plan competition they were hosting. I had already done all the work, so he thought I should come back from Chicago and give it a try. I ended up winning the Calvin competition and moved on to the West Michigan Regional Business Plan Competition, which was at GVSU, and was successful at that one as well. Went back to Chicago, and shortly after received an email from another mentor at Calvin who told me about 5x5. I didn't know what it was, so I looked into it, and this is kind of pre-Start Garden, so it was 5 ideas, 5 slides, 5 presenters, $5,000, 5 judges, you get the idea with 5x5, and ended up walking away with $5,000. So now I almost had $10,000 in startup funding and a fairly public idea. I had emails pouring in, when are you gonna open? This is a great idea, I have a food product, how can I help? But I had already started my job as a project manager at Steelcase, where I worked and learned for about a year. But fast forward to February 2012, and Uptown Kitchen is now open. Since then, it's been 2 years, and we have 20 artisan businesses working in the space. Everything from gourmet marshmallows, salsa, artisan sausage, habanero sauce, food carts. We have caterers and personal chefs, really every corner of the food industry that you can think of. They sell in places like Art at the Table, Roaster's Coffee, King's Market, the Downtown Market, and Fulton Street Market. Even on the menu at a variety of regional restaurants. In fact, you've probably eaten a product produced at the kitchen without even realizing it. So over the past few years, it's been a lot of fun to work with passionate food entrepreneurs and see what an effect they have on our regional food economy. Through the kitchen, I've been able to also extend into the surrounding community as a leader and do work like I did in Chicago and the Rogers Park Business Alliance. I'm involved in Uptown Marketing Committee, the EBA, and Neighborhood Ventures. Uptown Kitchen is also a proud member of Local First, which I'm actively involved in. So coming full circle to the purpose of the Wheelhouse talk, I felt like I was pushed into a more public form of leadership at a fairly young age as a business owner in Grand Rapids. When Tori asked me last May if I was interested in giving a Wheelhouse talk, I said yes right away, and then immediately kicked myself and picked the furthest date out that I could, which brings us to February. So I'm thinking that gives me about 10 months to figure out what it means to be a leader, what my leadership style is, and how I talk for about 30 minutes on that. So somewhere midsummer, I started a note in Evernote to keep track of my thoughts, and January hit and I realized my talk was in 30 days, so I better start doing some writing. I attended several of the talks in person over the past year and have watched more than a few from the archives. They're all very inspiring. In fact, if you haven't already, I recommend you go to the archives and watch a few. We're so fortunate to have these people doing such inspiring work in our city. But each one left me thinking, and why am I giving one of these? But you know what I noticed? In so many of them, the speaker led with something to the effect of, I never considered myself a leader, or I'm so humbled to be here, I'm a leader in training, or this is what I'm still learning about leadership. So I started thinking about what I already know about leadership, what I'd been taught, what I've learned along the way, and everything I have yet to learn. And I realized you lead from where you stand. Because really, leadership is not something to be achieved, it's a process. We're all leaders right where we're at. So here's my disclaimer for the next 20 minutes. I don't have brilliant advice or wisdom to pass on to you about leadership. I don't have decades of experience to share learned lessons from, but I can share something. I can share my own stories, lessons I'm still learning or just learned yesterday, and tell you that no matter where you're at in your journey, you can lead from where you stand. I want to share 10 suggestions for how to approach leadership a little differently this year, specifically to all of you in the Cook Leadership Academy in these first couple of rows. All of these things are things I'm learning right now about being a leader, and by no means have achieved. They're certainly not the 10 steps to being an effective leader or the definitive how-tos, but they are all concepts I'm finding to be so important for leading from where I stand. So, number 1, practice transparency and vulnerability. I thought I'd start out with the heavy stuff. No easing into things here at the Wheelhouse Talks. But this is also my number 1 because I think it builds such a great platform for so many other things. Being transparent and vulnerable isn't easy. I think our culture often equates it with weak. In fact, I think I saw a few of you cringe when I said the word vulnerable. Talking to all of you about leadership feels very vulnerable for me. I know I have a lot to learn still. As I was preparing for this talk, I was thinking, great, now the whole world's going to know I have no idea what I'm doing. I was really anxious about not sounding smart or being asked a question at the end I had no idea how to answer, and also realizing this was all going to be on video. But I think as we learn this practice of transparency and vulnerability, it becomes easier to be wrong, to disagree, and to ask questions. You don't have to know everything. There's a lot of vulnerability in these 3 things. There have been times in previous jobs or team settings where I haven't spoken up because I was afraid of sounding uninformed, or afraid I was missing something or didn't have enough background information. So I was quiet. But how else can you learn if you don't put a foot forward first? I recently finished reading a really great book by Brené Brown. Some of you may have seen her TED Talks on shame or vulnerability. The book is called I Thought It Was Just Me, But It Isn't, Making the Journey from What Will People Think to I Am Enough. She says in her book, admitting we don't understand and asking questions are both essential to real knowledge building. It's really hard to admit, at least for me, when I don't understand something, especially if you're trying to be a leader. You want to appear like you know what you're doing. When I'm unsure of something, it's easy to hide it and just be quiet instead of participating. But I found over the past few months, maybe the last year, that the more I open up to people with my questions, insecurities, and frustrations, the more of an open answer I receive, and the more that person has space to be transparent in return. I've had some of the most valuable conversations of my life as a result of this. So all these things are interconnected, and they all require something: the willingness to take risks, specifically risk failure. I think this has certainly become a topic of conversation in Grand Rapids lately with things like 5x5, Start Garden, and Failure Lab. I think we've all heard the phrases before: fail early, fail often, failure is a comma, fail, tweak, try again. It's certainly easier to talk about than actually do. Risk and failure don't have to be in starting a business. It could be in your current organization, on a committee, even in a meeting. I had this idea coming out of school that I was going to pick this career and off I would go. But I'm learning that life is more of a constant trial and error. And things work, some things work, and some things don't. But the more I try, the more I learn. I like the way Seth Godin puts it: if you don't start, you can't fail. But on the other hand, there's no doubt that if you don't start, you will fail. He says not starting and failing lead to precisely the same outcome, with different names. Being able to put a foot forward, to be wrong, to disagree, to be vulnerable, and to risk failure can only be done so with courage. And that comes from a place of understanding who you are. A leader knows what they bring to the table. There are a variety of great personality assessments out there. Some you can get online, and others where you buy a book. Show of hands, who's taken Strength Finders, Myers-Briggs? Fair number of you. According to Myers-Briggs, I am an ISFJ. Yes, I as an introvert. But I fall very close to the line, so I'm learning the correct term is ambivert. Still learning what that means, but apparently it's the best of both worlds. We'll find out. I just started Quiet by Susan Cain. She tells a story of herself as a little girl and an introvert, bringing a suitcase of books to camp that she's very excited about. She uses this as she continues her talk. She has a TED Talk as well, as a metaphor for her personality. And this is what she says: take a good look at what's inside your own suitcase and why you put it there. So extroverts, maybe your suitcases are also full of books, or maybe they're full of champagne glasses or skydiving equipment. Whatever it is, I hope you take these things out every chance you get and grace us with your energy and your joy. But introverts, you being you probably have the impulse to guard very carefully what's inside your suitcase. And that's okay. But occasionally, just occasionally, I hope you will open up your suitcase for other people to see, because the world needs you and it needs the things you carry. Leadership does not only apply in social situations, but also in more solitary situations, such as developing new techniques in the arts, creating new philosophies, writing profound books, and making scientific breakthroughs. So assessments like Myers-Briggs and StrengthsFinder help you understand how you communicate, how you work best with teams. It helps you understand how you need to replenish and find energy, and helps you understand how you learn. Do you prefer ambiguous or structured environments? Do you like to think about the big picture or the minute details? This doesn't mean you should find, or that you can find, an exact formula for yourself. Don't put yourself in a box. But it will help you understand what kind of work and leadership environment you thrive in. And it might just help you understand why you've been frustrated in past leadership roles or jobs or positions. I like the definition of leadership as a process of social influence in which someone or a person can enlist the aid and support of others in the accomplishment of a common task. Like Susan says, leadership doesn't always occur in social settings, but regardless, leadership is social influence. So think about your why. I know I've been talking a lot about TED, but Simon Sinek has a wonderful talk called How Great Leaders Inspire Action. He says there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power and authority, but those who lead inspire us. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. He also says, If you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you, or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Hearing this has been so impactful to my leadership in my business. I want to tell someone my story or why I do what I do, and have them tell someone else just because they believe in it too. I get really excited about local economies. My heart lights up a little bit, talking about neighborhood development, entrepreneurship, connecting, and community. I love walking into Roaster and getting my coffee from Steven, and he already knows what I want right when I walk in the door. Or getting my handmade gifts at Rebel Reclaimed and being able to talk to Chip across the counter. I also care about what I put in my body. I think we can make an incredible impact on our world simply with the choices we already make 3 times a day. So my why lends to what I'm doing right now with Uptown Kitchen. And that may not always be what I'm doing, but I would hope that my passions and my why shape whatever that is. So in the context of who you are, what is your why? What are you passionate about? And how do you inspire other people with your vision? So on to number 8, read. If you don't like to read, watch TED Talks or documentaries, listen to books on tape. But whatever you do, widen your world. Learning doesn't end with graduation, your next job, or your next promotion. My 4 years at Calvin were an important period of growth for me, but it wasn't all spent in books or time in the business program. I think my favorite class was actually philosophy. I learned about hermeneutics and how to identify the different lenses in which I see my world. It also helped me to see that other people's lenses are not the same as mine. Pick a few topics you want to know about. Pick something you want to be an expert in, something you've always been curious about but has nothing to do with your current role. Then find a few books, pick a couple TED Talks, journal articles, a book on tape, and spend some time learning. This year, I'm learning to ask better questions and retain more information as I read. I'm learning about introversion, shame, and vulnerability, and I really want to have a very successful container garden, so I'm reading a little bit about vegetables, and have been teaching myself how to can. Maybe for you it's history or architecture or design, development, or a certain culture you want to know more about. But what you will learn will impact your conversations, your awareness, your context, and as a result, your leadership. So taking time to read and learn is a commitment, especially when you're working or going to school full-time. It's often hard to do when our lives are so busy. I recently read an article called "Busy Isn't Respectable Anymore." I, for the longest time, and I'm still working on it, thought that busy equaled successful, important, and achieving. This is what a leader was. And if you weren't busy, you were missing something, or I wasn't working hard enough. I'd like to paraphrase a story from the article. The author, Tyler Ward, is talking about an experiment a friend of his and his wife did. The goal was never to use the phrase busy for an entire year to see if there were any changes in attitude or behavior. So this is what he says. We engaged with people more authentically. We stopped manipulating our friends. We also quit guilting other people with all of our so-called busyness. We stopped justifying our poor behaviors and choices. There's nothing quite like the overachiever in the crowd diminishing everyone else's efforts. Our busyness somehow validated us in the minds of our peers, or so we thought. But when we stopped using the word, we were free to be happy with our efforts for the day, and free to let others be comfortable with their own accomplishments. Busy, it would seem, is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we said it, the more we felt it. The more we felt it, the more we acted it. The more we acted like it, well, you know the rest. And guess what? When we quit saying it, we reversed some, if not all, of the craziness. This concept of needing to feel busy all the time and to validate myself with this busyness is something that I've definitely found myself caught up in. I found myself saying yes to everything, getting over-involved in things I shouldn't have, and ending up not enough time for things I truly care about. When I don't give myself time to be idle, to rest and to rejuvenate, especially as a closet introvert, I quickly hit a wall, think less critically, less creatively, and that doesn't do me any good, let alone the things I'm involved in or trying to lead. But don't misunderstand me. There's certain value in getting the job done and going the extra mile, and there will always be those seasons that seem more tiring than others. Another quote from the article is, "Becoming less busy isn't about slowing down or working less, nor is it some self-indulgent ambition. Becoming less busy is about defining success on your own terms and designing a lifestyle that you believe in deeply, no matter what that lifestyle is or how fast or slow it may be. So my challenge for you this week, or maybe this month, is to catch yourself if you ever answer someone else's question with busy, and think about what you really want to say and how you can more authentically engage with that person. So last, but certainly not least, spend time with people that challenge you. Jim Rohn's famous quote says, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." So who are those people? Find peers, coworkers, and mentors that push you, pull you, and challenge you. People that won't let you settle, and people that will help you learn. A few of my mentors and many people I spend a significant amount of time with are here in the audience, and that means so much to me. Those that aren't here helped me with my talk in advance, or have over time helped me shape my view of leadership. In some way or another, they all contributed to the formation of this list. So think about who you're spending your time with. How are they challenging you, and how are they helping you grow? How are they pushing you to succeed? And I think in return, think about how you do that for other people. So these are my 10. Take it for what it's worth. I think in Grand Rapids, especially as a young leader, I found that there's a unique platform here to have a voice if you want one. Find a few ways of your own to grow in your leadership this year. But whatever you do, don't view leadership as something to be achieved, a role far off in the future. You can lead from wherever you stand. Thank you.
We have time for questions, so just raise your hand and I'll come by with the microphone.
Hi. As a young woman entrepreneur, what are some of the challenges that you faced or have you?
Excuse me, I'm gonna drink some water a second. Specifically as a woman in leadership?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of stereotypes about women in business and women in leadership, but I think a lot of that are the ones you put on yourself. So I think there's definitely been times when I felt when I walked into a room, maybe more with my age, that I am too young to say something, or respect level is a little different because I'm a woman and I'm young. But I think you get the respect that you demand. So for me, I think it's changing the perspective for yourself more than expecting other people to change theirs. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a similar question a little more broadly. What would you say in starting your business was one of the largest challenges?
There was a lot I didn't know. I don't think that I expected how long it was going to take to do the construction. There was a lot of costs that came up that I hadn't built into the original business plan. And I think a lot of it was just learning along the way. It was a lot harder than I expected. So I know that's kind of a broad answer, but I definitely bit off a little bit more than I was expecting. So it was rewarding, definitely, but. Yeah.
Going right up with that, what made you take that leap from your comfortable job that you already had at taking pursuing opening your own business?
I often tell people I snowballed into it more than anything else. I think that over the course of the year, where I had written the business plan and then pitched it several times to different crowds of people and had received really great feedback on it, and then had started a job at Steelcase but already started looking for locations. It wasn't ever, I didn't wake up one morning and think, oh, I'm going to quit my job and start an incubator kitchen. It all kind of happened simultaneously.
Kelly, thank you so much for the thoughtful comments. My question has to do with, say, your main mentor. What were the qualities of your best mentor?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I have just one best mentor. I have several that mentor me in different areas of my life, but I think regardless of who they are, it's someone I look up to, whether it's their leadership style or the role that they have, or just how they push me and challenge me. So I think one of the biggest things is it's someone that I can be open with and transparent with. Because if you can't be transparent with someone or open, I think it's difficult to learn.
So I've really enjoyed your talk today. I learned so much more about what you're doing than I had already known, so thank you for that. I think it'd be really interesting for you to share what a day in your work looks like now.
Oh.
What does a typical day look like for you?
I don't think there's a typical day. I'm at the kitchen at least once every day. There's just things that have to be done, checking in on the space and temperatures and the coolers and the freezer and making sure that everything got cleaned appropriately. There's scheduling reservations, kind of all the administrative work that goes into running the space. A lot of my time is spent in talking with potential food businesses and showing them around our space and what it's going to take for them to get their food business started. And then meeting with other people in the community, whether it directly affects Uptown Kitchen or not. And then I have time commitments to Easttown Business Association and Uptown Marketing that take a little bit of my time every day too. So I think I'm just in a lot of different places every day, but it's fun. I like it. Hi.
With a lot of students in here, and I'm one that just graduated, they're going to be looking for jobs out of school, and we all know it's awful out there for young people coming out trying to find jobs. So what's your plug for entrepreneurship and playing a role in what they're about to find themselves in?
Yeah, I think if you're considering entrepreneurship, go for it. But talk to people. Talk to people who aren't entrepreneurs and people who are entrepreneurs, and really make sure that what you're going after is something you're truly passionate about, and you will be able to get yourself up every morning and get there and get the job done, whatever that looks like in entrepreneurship. I think that I wasn't prepared necessarily to not have that 8 to 5 structure. I kind of launched myself into it, and it's like, okay, I have this whole day, what do I do with it? And it's really your responsibility to say, all right, I know I need to meet with these people, I have these phone calls to make, this was due yesterday, I need to get it done today. So really, I mean, spend some time thinking and talking to other people too. I can't stress how important other people's feedback is, especially mentors and peers. So entrepreneurship can be a lot of fun, but definitely, put in your due diligence beforehand, really with the idea that you have.
You mentioned briefly taking on too much at one time. Have you found a fine line or divider between pushing yourself and really taking on too much?
Yeah, I think for a period last year, I had a little bit too much on my plate, and it was starting to stress me out, and it was becoming visible to other people. And really, it was a matter of letting a few things go that I was involved in, but not necessarily very passionate about. So not only was that taking my time, but it was taking energy I didn't really have to give. So I think it's being aware of where you're putting your energy and what that looks like. So I don't know if I'm less busy. I should not be using that word. I was trying to do a quick think, like, what's another word I can use? Now than I was then, but what I am putting my time in, I want to be putting my time there. So.
How do we attract more of you to West Michigan?
Oh, that's a good question. I particularly love the neighborhoods here and how much there is to do and people to know. And kind of like I said, so I went to San Francisco 2 years ago in the summer and fell in love with the city. I think I told my mom to ship my stuff because I wanted to stay there and wasn't going to take my return flight home. There's a ton going on there. It's great, especially for someone who loves food and local things. There's an endless amount of stuff to do there, but I also felt like if I were to move what I'm doing in Grand Rapids to San Francisco, I don't know if anyone would hear me. I think it would take an awful lot to have the platform that you have in Grand Rapids, to have a voice if you want to have a voice. I think that's, I haven't done extensive traveling in the States or the world, but to me, Grand Rapids feels like a really great place as a leader in training to be able to accomplish some great things. So I think that is a great way to attract people.
I think I can handle this one too. Going back to your answer to Lee's question about leaders and mentors, what was there about the style of the mentors that you were working with that gave you the freedom to be open and vulnerable with them?
They were open with me, I think, first. Either that was telling a personal failure or story, or even telling me that it's okay not to know everything or have my stuff together. I think often when I sat down for the first time with a mentor or someone I really respected, I wanted to have this image portrayed that was very put together. I know everything, you can count on me for things, but that's not ever true. So I think that, I mean, you can count on me for things, but thinking on your feet in front of a bunch of people can be difficult. But I think that there was this image I was portraying and who I really felt I was, and I really wanted to share that with someone, but it's hard to be that first person to do that when you're either, you have a lot less experience in something, or you're, in a different generation. I think that can be really hard. So it helps when the person you're talking with opens up in some way for you to be able to open up in return. Hi.
Mike, Kelly, you're an introvert and a leader, obviously getting a lot done. What are some of the things that have helped you recharge the most as an introvert in leadership?
So for the first few times I took Myers-Briggs, I always was a ESFJ, which I embraced really quickly. Like, I'm an extrovert, great, cool. But was always very close on the line. And when I took it sometime in college, I tested introvert, and I'm only beginning to learn what that means for me. And because I fall so close on the line, I've started looking into what this ambivert thing is. So for me, I actually like public speaking, which not a whole lot of people do, extroverts or introverts, but learning that being extroverted isn't necessarily how outgoing you are. An introvert can be very comfortable in a room of people. But I think for me specifically, I'm learning that I love connecting and I love community, and I get energy from people, but I also need time for myself. I need a day that's just quiet, or a morning to recharge and think. I learn best when I'm reading and writing. So it's something I'm still learning and trying to figure out what that means for me, but giving myself this space to recharge is, I think, what I'm learning right now. I was always go, 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 because I can do this, but I'm learning I need that day or that afternoon or morning to pull myself back together.
Just a comment, for what it's worth, there are at least 3 recovering introverts in the audience today that I know.
I'm starting to own it a little bit more.
No more questions? Oh, one more.
I'm in a liberal education class right now. We're focusing a lot on the changes that need to be made to liberal education, especially with all of the schools that are now coming up that you see. And a lot of it talks about talking to other people and just discussing things and bringing out ideas. Are there changes that you could see to your education that could be made that you would maybe want to bring to your college or want to be made public so that people can discuss that and say, yes, maybe this is a change that needs to be made to education so that these students are able to learn more and ask the right questions and become those leaders?
That's a really good question. I think a lot of changes I would make, or things I think would be a good thing, or I already see happening. I think the Cook Leadership Academy, I've been learning just today a little bit about what that means for all of you, is a great example of that. It gives them a platform to meet business leaders and other leaders in the community and learn from them and ask them questions and have that space to do that and come to talks like this. I think that was something, I don't know if it was available to me at Calvin or I just didn't take advantage of it, but I know that when I graduated, my network in Grand Rapids was a lot more limited than maybe now looking back it should have been. I think that just having that space to, whether it's small groups, I can't really speak to other schools, and I really only know my Calvin experience, and I'm sure a lot of schools are doing this, but just having room to ask questions and meet with people outside of your education environment, I think, is really important. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Last call for questions. All right. Well, can you give her a hand?
Thank you. Oh.
Keeping in Hauenstein tradition, it's my pleasure to express our
Thank you
gratitude
so
for the
much.
Hauenstein Center swag bag. So it was a really pleasure to have
Thank
you here. You know, I was really pleased actually that you were chosen to be here today because we have a few things in common. Well, I intern at Steelcase.
Okay.
But we're both
It's a great place.
quite young. And I think there's actually a few people here that are not even 20 yet. And I think it was a really great challenge to have such a well-known leader in the community be here and really challenge us young people to do more with what we have and take advantage of resources and opportunities to change our community. So really, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.